It was October. Leaves had turned golden and red, and the nights grew darker and colder. Every year, as Halloween approached, a small village in the mountains fell into an uneasy silence, tense as a drawn bowstring. The villagers knew about the forest just a few kilometers away and the dark legend tied to it a tale that most had forgotten, but the old kept alive in their memories. According to the story, years ago, a man moved into the forest, a hermit whom everyone considered strange and reclusive. His home lay deep within the woods, hidden among the densest trees, and the villagers said his house had neither windows nor doors. It was always dark inside, with only a faint glow beneath, like the fires of the underworld. The hermit was named Luca, and he was known to perform strange rituals, read ancient books, and speak with creatures that no one else could see. Over time, people began to notice that every year, on the eve of Halloween, someone would disappear, a pet, or even a person who ventured into the woods and never returned. But this year, 3 teenagers, Ilya, Sofia, and Danilo, decided they would be the first to uncover the hermit's secret and prove the villagers' fears were mere superstitions. The idea of the mysterious house and the sinister legends about Luca excited them, and they resolved to explore the forest during the full moon. They met on the village outskirts, bringing flashlights, knives, and an old, cracked compass that had once belonged to Danilo's grandfather. The forest greeted them with cold silence. The air smelled of decay and dampness, and each step echoed loudly, their footfalls seeming to sink into the depths of the woods. After walking a few kilometers, they reached a small clearing. Suddenly, the compass spun wildly, and a scream shattered the silence, coming from deep within the trees. They froze, trying to understand where the sound was coming from, but soon realized it had originated from the heart of the forest. Ilya shivered, but Sofia placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "We have to keep going." They noticed a faint light flickering in the distance between the trees, and clutching their flashlights, they moved toward it. Gradually, they came upon an old, dilapidated hut, windowless, with a door barely hanging on rusty hinges. It looked as if it were made of branches and swamp mud. Ilya's heart began to race, but his fear was outweighed by his curiosity. They opened the door, finding almost complete darkness inside, broken only by a dim glow seeping up from a crack in the floor. The room was filled with strange objects, human skulls, jars with preserved animal parts, and books in a language they didn't recognize. Amid the clutter stood a table with a drawn circle scattered with the remnants of extinguished candles, their wax blackened and crusted. Ilya approached the table, noticing an old book with brittle, burnt pages. He opened it, his eyes tracing strange words that looked like curses, and his voice, as he began to read, grew hoarse and deep. Sofia and Danilo felt the floor begin to tremble, while shadows in the corners of the room stirred to life. Suddenly, from the darkness, Luca appeared. He was tall, emaciated, with a face twisted in anger, and black, empty eyes that seemed to peer directly into their souls. He reached out, and Ilya froze, feeling as if his body had gone numb. The hermit leaned forward, whispering something that the others couldn't hear, but Ilya's face was filled with terror. "You shouldn't be here," Luca hissed, turning to them. "You've left your mark on a place that does not forgive." Sofia and Danilo tried to pull Ilya back, but something invisible held them in place. The ceiling above began to creak, and a hole opened up in the floor, revealing a black void. They all heard voices coming from the abyss, cries, moans, countless voices of those who had disappeared into the forest, seemingly never to find their way out. With all her strength, Sofia tried to pull Ilya back, but suddenly saw that his eyes had turned dark, as though his soul already belonged to the forest. He turned his head toward them and quietly whispered, "You cannot escape. You are now a part of this place." Just then, Luca stepped forward, and the walls began to close in on them, their bodies pulled toward the shadows that seeped from every crack, filling the room. The floor beneath them gave way, and all 3 of them fell into the void, hearing only Luca's final words echoing through the darkness, "You are now a part of the autumn forest." The next morning, villagers found the hut, standing as quiet as ever. But inside, there was no one, only an old book lying open on the table, the page from which their journey into horror had begun. The floor was scattered with red leaves, like a final reminder of those who had ventured into the forest and never returned.